This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
The following episode of Charlotte Cooks is brought to you by Central Piedmont Community College and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello there, and I am so glad you are joining me on Charlotte Cooks today. You're in for a treat. You're going to learn one of the easiest desserts you have ever made, and people are going to think, whoa, what a gourmet you are when they taste this. And you're going to want to either keep the secret all to yourself, or you're going to want to share it, and people think you're absolutely brilliant. What we're making today is called a lemon posset. And posset is a dish that actually established itself first in medieval England. And when it was first developed, it was developed out of curdled milk and ale. And it was served warm. And if you can imagine drinking curdled milk and ale as a medicinal thing, it was sort of like repulsive. But hopefully, as things went on, they were able to improve the flavor and the appearance of this. And so it actually became very, very popular, in so much so that Shakespeare actually refers to posset in The Merry Wives of Windsor. And it's really kind of fun to see all these things going back so far in ages, and yet they're still around today just the same way that we make them back then. But we're not going to use curdled milk today, and we're not going to use ale. What we are going to use is heavy cream, lemon juice, and sugar. That's all that's in this. So let's show you how this gets done. So first thing you're going to do, you want to make sure that you have a pot that is big enough so that when this boils, it's not going to boil over the side of the pot and all over your range. And I'm going to show you why it's important to have this, because when milk and dairy products go into a pot and they get heated, when they boil, if you had any experience with this at all, one thing that it does is the volume increases and it just goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And so we want to make sure that we're going to be paying attention to this. So you also have to have a big pot so that when it comes up, it's not going to go over the sides. So we're going to use 3 cups of cream. We're going to use a cup and just a little bit more of sugar. And we're going to bring that to a boil. We're going to stir it. Now, the one beautiful thing about this dessert is that it has no eggs, it has no flour, it's just cream and sugar and lemon juice. So unless someone is averse to eating dairy products, this will fit into a whole lot of diet profiles. Obviously not keto, but if you've got a vegan, you could do this if they eat dairy. If you've got someone who doesn't do eggs, someone who doesn't do flour, well, this is the perfect dish for them. This posset that I'm making here is going to be the very basic posset, cream, sugar, and lemon juice. Now you can take this into another realm and add other flavors to it and really start developing it. What I'm going to do is show you how to infuse some flavors into the cream before we add our citrus juice. So I want to keep stirring this. I want to keep my eyes on this. I don't want to walk away. I don't want to ignore it. But I do also want to get ready for making the infused flavor in the next posset. So I want to look at this, and every time I see a bubble on there, I'm going to stir it. Okay, so keep that in mind. You're going to stir these things. So over here, I'm going to take 3 more cups of cream. And right now, I've only got 2 cups in here, so I'm going to add it up to 3. See, on these mason jars, they always have these beautiful measures on the side of the cup, so that you can always tell without having to pull out your measuring cups. So just heavy cream, and I see some bubbles on the side. So I'm going to give this a stir. When you see the bubbles start forming, this is when you really, really, really can't ignore it. You really can't. Number 1, milk scorches, cream scorches, dairy scorches on the bottom of the pot. Really, really easy. So when you're choosing the pot, you want to use a stainless steel pot. You want to use something with a nice heavy bottom on it, okay? Not a thin bottom pot, because you will just end up with scorched cream like crazy and you won't enjoy posset and you'll say, what a bad recipe. But it's really a very good recipe. So now we are really getting close to it coming to a boil. Okay, so we're going to let that work. I'm going to take my next cream and I'm going to put it in this other pot. Pour it right on in there. I love the way cream looks. It looks like velvet. It's so neat. And now I'm going to turn that heat on, put it on medium, and then I'm going to infuse this with some orange zest. I'm going to put a little bit of this orange zest in here because we're going to make an orange posset. Hello. Okay. All right, this is demanding my attention. Come take a look. It is boiling and boiling and boiling. You want to adjust your heat a little bit. And now we are in the business of making posset. When it starts rising up, you're going to see it coming up, 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 up the sides of your pan. Don't freak out. Just stir it. You're saying, it's still rising while I'm stirring it. Turn your heat down just a little bit until you can control it, okay? Now I'm going to do this two-handed here. So I got my orange zest on this side, and this I just need to stir. I just need to keep my eyes on it. Now if I could separate my eyes and look at two different things at once, I would. But I just need to stir this orange zest into here. And this one, I'm going to flavor with orange and lavender. When this comes to boil, you're going to boil it for a minimum 5 minutes. You can go up to 10 minutes. One thing you want to look for is a little bit of thickening, but we don't want it to get down to a paste or any kind of like a really thick thing because the lemon juice is going to coagulate the milk and make it nice and thick like we want. Okay, so our lavender buds. Our lavender buds usually come dried and they're really, really nice. When you get lavender buds, you want to make sure you're buying food grade lavender. And so they're very, very strong. And so you don't need very many. Some people will leave the lavender buds in their posset or in their puddings. And you can, but it's kind of like biting into a piece of soap when you actually get one and it's not very pleasant. I would take them and strain them out, and I'm going to show you how to do that later. So I'm just going to use about a teaspoon of the lavender buds, and that's going to be more than enough to infuse. You want to make sure you're using a heat-proof spatula and that you are touching the bottom. We're not just stirring the top. You want to make sure you're touching the bottom so that nothing is going to stick down there so it scorches. I'm going to turn the heat down on this one because I want to really pay attention to this one over here right now. All right, it is getting very close to being done, and the way I can tell is the bubbles have changed ever so slightly. They're beginning to look thicker. When I stir it, I see the bubbles all throughout the liquid, not just on the top. It is one of the components that happens when you start boiling cream and sugar together. Melted sugar has a whole wonderful characteristic all on its own. All right, so I think that this one is going to be ready for the next step. So now we're going to add our lemon juice. I just turned off the heat, and I should actually take it completely off the heat because this burner is still hot, and I don't necessarily want it to stay getting hot. This is what the mixture looks like before I add the lemon juice. This is squeezed from fresh lemons. Please use fresh lemons for this. You need those active enzymes. Bottled lemon juice goes through a heat process, and those enzymes are not necessarily active. You have lemon taste. It still has acid in it, but fresh lemons have something else, all right? So we're going to take this and pour this in. You're going to start seeing an immediate change. The color's going to turn nice and bright. Remember, the handles on your pot are hot, guys. The colors are nice and bright. It turns into a nice pale creamy yellow color. So you want to let this sit just for a few minutes, and you're mostly just starting to let this cool down, because if you're choosing to use a nice crystal goblet to put your posset in, you don't want to put it in hot because that would crack your crystal. And so all you want to do is just make sure that this just gets cooled down a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to handle, but the real magic happens when it cools down, and I'll show you what happens there. So I've got my orange posset sitting here, and it is simmering, and I am watching it, and I'm going to show you what to do with this after this is finished simmering. But before I do that, I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this posset. We're going to take a pitcher. Now, it's important to get a pitcher that has a pouring spout on it, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pouring it into our dishes. We are going to be using some little dishes like this today. So you can choose to actually make a little pie crust, and they have these pie crusts you can buy already made. You can make your own pie crust if you want to, but you want to go ahead and bake it off if you choose to do this in a little pie. Or you can use little cups, which is what we're going to use today. And you can also use all these beautiful ready-made phyllo cups. And all of this is really great alternatives to be able to use for serving up your posset. And then we're going to show you how you're going to decorate it up. And I've got some fun ideas for you to use for decorations. Now we're going to pour this into this pitcher. Look at how pretty that color is. Isn't that nice? Now, if you wanted to be real fastidious, you can get a spatula in there and get every last drop, because sometimes that last drop is enough for another portion. Look at how much. There's about another half a cup coming out of there. this is the easy part. It's easy to pour. We are ready just to go ahead and put it in whatever we're going to serve it in. So I'm going to add a couple to these little pie crusts. And remember, the pie crusts have to be made, already baked off. When I'm doing this, I like to leave my pie crust in the little pie tins until I'm ready to serve it, simply because it's going to be easier to handle them and move them around without breaking the pie crust. And now on these little phyllo cups, you can buy these in the grocery store year-round, and they're really marvelous to have on hand to make quick little desserts. You can always take this and mix a little bit of lemon juice and some cream cheese, pop it in there, add a couple blueberries, and we're going to talk about decorating and adding flavors to these things in just a moment. And so here we are with these baby possets. These are nice little bite-sized possets. And as you can see, I've got some berries on the plate, so I'm probably going to end up decorating these with some berries. And now we can use these little cups. And you can see that this one recipe will make several versions. If you wanted to do several portions, you can. All right, we got to fill these up. Use this up. Orange posset is simmering away over there. Here I tell you not to ignore it, and I'm paying all my attention to the lemon posset. All right, that's all I can put in here. These are all full. And so what we do with this now is we take this, and this goes into the refrigerator to cool down. And this is almost ready to strain. It smells so good. Let me move this over to this other burner here. So here's the secret to making the posset coagulate. What happens with the posset and coagulation? If you ever just try to take lemon juice and add it to milk, you're going to find it gets to be a nice curdled mess. And so the reason that we simmer the cream and the sugar together is that it changes the structure of the dairy molecule so that when you add the acid to it in the lemon juice, instead of that milk curdling, it's going to absorb that lemon juice to become more custard-like. It's all about science. So our orange posset is now ready to strain because we don't want that orange zest in there. We don't want to keep that lavender in there. If you wanted that, what happens is it gives you a little bit of a texture in your custard. And sometimes I just really like a plain, smooth custard. But if you want that little bit of texture, you don't have to strain it. So this is how we're going to strain it. We're going to take a bowl, and we are going to use a really fine wire mesh strainer. You don't have to get one this fancy. If you just got a little round one you buy at the store, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and strain this. One of the secrets to getting everything out of the strainer is just to go ahead and take your spatula or a ladle or something and just rub everything through. So you can see it come through the screen, and all that's going to be left in the screen is the orange zest and the lavender buds. And since we don't necessarily want that in our little posset, we're just going to leave that behind. And see, there's just nothing really left in there. So now this is where we're going to add our citrus juice. This is going to be orange and lemon. Now lemon is the one that has the stronger acid in it. And so we're going to go ahead and pour some of the lemon juice in. And then for our flavors, we're also going to be adding some orange juice, okay? So what we've done is we've just reduced the amount of lemon juice just a little bit, because that lemon juice is what's going to give us a lot of that coagulation. And if you remember, oranges aren't nearly as tart and acidic as lemons are. And so they don't quite have that level of acid. So we want to always have the lemon juice for the acid and then the orange for the flavor. It's still going to turn out to be that beautiful cream color, and it's just going to thicken up. And because we've ran it through the sieve already, it's already cooling down enough to where we're ready to pour it into the pitcher and into our little dishes. And here we've got these containers that we're going to be using. Once again, these little cups. You're going to find with Posset, the little cups are probably going to be your favorites. Because they're, number one, easy. You can make this a couple days ahead of time. When your dinner party comes, all we're going to do now is just take this and decorate it and serve it. And because this is orange and lavender, we can garnish this with some beautiful fresh lavender and some little orange slices. If you wanted to drink this warm, you certainly could, but it's just so much better cool as a custard. All right, so next I'm going to show you how to make a nice little Palmier cookie. They're so simple, just like the Posset. It's not difficult, only a few ingredients. All you need is a piece of puff pastry and some cinnamon sugar and an oven, okay? So what we're going to do with this, if we wanted to make our cookies larger, it depends on the size that you cut your puff pastry. These cookies here were made with a half of one of these. And for our little Possets, I'm going to make some tiny cookies because I want them to fit inside of that little cup. And if you want to remember how big those cups are, they're just tiny. And so if we put this cookie on top, well, sure, you can do that, but there's not a whole lot of room for more garnishes. And so what I want to do is actually make that cookie just a little bit smaller. I love these cookies, by the way. I make them on this size all the time, even bigger, you know, they're really wonderful. So all we're going to do is we cut our puff pastry, and we're going to take cinnamon sugar, and we're going to cover this pastry with cinnamon sugar. You don't have to put any butter on it. All right, we're just going to cover this up just like this. I'm only going to do half of this. You get quite a few cookies out of one of these, and they don't take very long in the oven. You want to have your oven preheated to 400 degrees. 400 degrees for puff pastry, because what makes puff pastry rise and puff is the melting of the butter that's in it. And if you have the temperature in your oven too low, your butter will just melt out and you won't get any rise, or you get very little rise out of it. So you need to have it at 400, sometimes 425. I think 400 is really a good temperature. So fold this to the center. And then you're going to fold this other part to the center. Try and get as close to you can to the middle. Might have to fudge it just a little bit. So right now we've got things folded to the middle. I'm sure you guys have folded things like this before, so it's not a challenge. Then we're going to fold it in half, like this. Okay? Fold it in half like this, kind of like a book fold. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and do it on the other one. Now, you're not going to mash these together. You're just going to hold it, get it so it goes like this. Once again, fold it to the half. And then we're going to fold it to the half. Line that runs down the middle. It's imaginary, of course. All right. And then fold it in half again. So now we've got these little bitty folded doughs. And all we're going to do with these is we're going to slice them. We're going to place them on a parchment-lined cookie sheet, and we're going to bake them in the oven. You don't want to cut these too wide. You just want to cut them into little pieces like this, okay? Maybe about finger width wide, maybe a little less than finger width. And the one thing you want to do, you want to cut straight down. You don't want to saw it back and forth going all the way down. You want to cut it and saw it at the bottom so that make sure you get all the way through. What happens if you saw this on the way down is you're mashing the dough layers together, and they're not going to be able to separate as nicely as they could. They'll still separate and fluff, but not as nicely as they could. Okay, here we go. Parchment line, nothing else on it. And now you're going to stand these little guys up like little soldiers. And stand them all in the same direction, different directions. But you want to give them room because they are going to expand quite a bit. As you can see, when they start out like this, and they end up like this, they do expand quite a bit. It's going to look like you don't have a whole lot on the sheet pan, but that's okay because it's better to be undercrowded than overcrowded on these, because once they start unfolding and they run into each other, they start looking a little funny. And sometimes they will unfold on you all the way. And that's okay because you just keep those in the kitchen and use those for kitchen snacks. And it's Cook's treat. Now, the neat thing about this is that instead of just using plain old cinnamon sugar, you can also add things like cardamom or ginger or other warm dried spices, nutmeg, that kind of thing, to make them really, really, really exotic and really good. Into the oven they go. So this is what they look like when they're done. Aren't they cute? You know, so we're going to use these on our possets today. Let me show you how we are going to decorate. We can use some graham cracker crumbs. We can use some berries. When we do our orange and lavender possets, we can put a little orange on there. We can have some little mint leaves if we wanted. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we are going to take our berries. We're going to carefully put them on the edge. When you cluster things on your dishes, you always want to cluster things in groups of 3 and not even numbers. And that's just because it's so much pleasing to the eye to see groups of 3 than it does to see even numbers. So whenever you're doing something like this, just go in groups of 3. And then we're going to take a little bit of our graham cracker crumb, put a little bit of graham cracker crumb on here just for a little bit of crunch. And these are just plain old graham crackers that have been crunched up. You can buy graham cracker crumbs and use those. You can take graham cracker sleeves and crunch those up with a rolling pin till they get nice and fine. And then once we get this done, I really like cinnamon and lemon and blueberry together. So I'm going to just touch this with a little bit of cinnamon sugar. I really don't want the cinnamon sugar to be like outstanding, but just a little hint when you taste this will be marvelous, darling, just marvelous. So now I've got some other sprinkles over here, and I can put some of these beautiful sprinkles that you would use on candy dishes or, anytime you're using things in the bake shop. I love to go to the stores, and especially during the holidays, and buy fun little sprinkles because they come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes, and they just look really, really nice on some of your desserts. Just put some on each one. It gives it a nice little crunch. And then we're going to add some of these other sprinkles to it as well, just so that we have some color that makes it look good. All right, so I'm going to use a little spoon for this and just put a couple little green sprinkles in here just to make them look nice. All right. And then for your little tiny cookies, grab a little tiny cookie and pop it in there. And there's one more deco we're going to put on here. Just a little tiny cookie. And then for the last thing, I'm going to take some whipped cream, and I'm going to put a little tiny star of whipped cream on each side. And there we go. That's how we can decorate these beautiful possets. And those are ready to serve. Let me show you how we're going to do the phyllo doughs. Here's the orange and lavender. We've got some beautiful garnishes on the plate with some fresh lavender and some nice orange sections. And you could take these orange sections, just cut your orange pieces down into little bitty pieces, and make some nice little bite on the plate when you're eating. So I'm going to add a little bit of this to here, put it down here by the thumb, add a little bit of this. I'm not going to put any lavender on the plate simply because I have it on the serving plate. And the reason I'm not going to add any lavender to it is because, once again, if you bite into it, it's just not that pleasant. So here I'm going to put a little bit of sprinkle here, a little bit of sprinkle here, some more goodies, just to make it look pretty. And I'm going to use some of these goodies over here, just to make it look pretty. And you can be wide open with this stuff, guys. Anything that you want. And so here we are. We're going to go put these over here. Add a little cookie, because we love the little cookies. You can stay right there. And guys, I'm going to show you these possets. Here we have, from medieval England to the Gulf Coast of the United States. This is a recipe that you find all over the Gulf Coast. This is why we included it in our Bringing People to the Table series this season. You guys are not going to believe how good these taste. And your friends and your family are going to go, wow, when did you become gourmet? And you, like I said earlier, you can choose to save this recipe for yourself and have it be your secret weapon, or you can actually share it and have your friends think you are a marvelous genius. Thank you for watching this episode of Charlotte Cooks. I do hope you go home and you make posset for yourself. Let me know. Send me pictures of your posset. I'd love to see what you make, and I want to know your opinion of it too. So coming up on the next Charlotte Cooks, what's really in Brunswick stew? We have someone coming up here that's going to be making Brunswick stew. We are featuring Chef Yvette Kearns from the Petite Chef Charlotte. She is a premier personal chef here in Charlotte, and she's bringing you her secret recipe for Brunswick stew and cornbread. And I think she might even have a surprise or two. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Send me an email at pamela.roberts@cpcc.edu. You can watch this show and past episodes on PBS Charlotte Passport, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this episode of Charlotte Cooks, and I will catch you next time.
A production of PBS Charlotte.